Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel. You're a host of Chatting with Betsy and Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guests may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, I am so excited about my guests. Yes, I do get excited about every guest that comes on, and I get excited about doing my show because it's exciting. I love what I do. And I love to bring resources and to help other people. And my guest today wrote a book that has touched my heart, and I just encourage everyone to read it. I'm going to tell you about my guest. The name of the book is The Heart and Soul of Caring by Robert Sharpe. Robert Sharpe is a radio host. He has his own show. He is producer. He is founder of BiteRadio.me, and he's host and producer of the Bringing Inspiration to Earth show. Robert Sharpe wrote 3 books and also self-published them. And this is one of the books. Robert is also a photographer. Very talented man you are, Robert. And he also has Joy Potential, Where You the Least Expect It. It's No Secret, Spirituality Bites. And his photo book, Nature's Inspiration, Volume 1. I want to welcome Robert Sharpe to Chatting with Betsy. Thanks for coming on, Robert.
Oh, thank you, Betsy. It's such a joy for me to be here. I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Oh, well, you are very welcome. Robert, I loved your book, and I'm into book covers, and I'd like the cover. I got to talk about the cover of your book. The cover of the book, folks, has pictures of the different caregivers and their loved ones, and it's about different stories of caregivers and their journey. And as everyone who has listened to my show knows that I was a caregiver to my husband, Matt. And this book is very heart-touching and has different stories. And I had to ask you, Robert, what I ask every author is, what inspires you to write this book?
Well, this was one of those ideas that as I was waking up, it was one of those waking dream things that just before I woke, it was like a directive. It was something that I need to do this, and the idea was doing the caregiving, the heart and soul of caring, to do it in a way that highlights the person who is receiving the care, the essence of that person. Quite often when it comes to caregiving, we focus on the real need of caregivers to take care of themselves.
Right.
But sometimes, in the process of providing that care, sometimes, we lose sight of the essence of the person. If they have Alzheimer's, that kind of thing, it can be really difficult. So this was to, I guess, honor the essence of the one receiving the care and, adding, what the loved one went through to provide that care.
That is beautiful. I have to ask you this, because I know that it was very difficult to get caregivers to come on a talk show to talk. Jeannie White, who's station manager of Passionate World Talk Radio, she had a show, just went out of my head, the Connection series. I think that, if I remember that correctly. And I spoke weekly, but trying to get people that I knew as caregivers to come on, it was very difficult. Did you find it difficult to find people to write a story?
Well, it was. The response wasn't as strong as I had hoped, when I basically, reached out to my circle of acquaintances and friends and that kind of thing. And I think from what I gathered from those who did contribute, that, it was a very difficult and a kind of a painful thing for them, to write down all of what went on. That it was difficult for them to do that for themselves, and so writing it down and going out there and letting everybody know what's going on was like a totally different thing. But anyway, the ones who did contribute recognized they learned something, and they thought that what they learned might be helpful to a reader.
Yes, that's very true. I know myself that I'm a talker, not a writer. I know what I want to say, but it doesn't come from translate from the brain to the hand. I'd rather talk. And reading these stories was very inspiring, and I often, I encourage people, for veteran caregivers, to tell their story to help someone else. Our stories, our experiences help other people. And that's how I felt in reading this book. If I was new to caregiving, reading this book would help me to know that I'm not alone in how I feel.
Yeah, that's real important, because that the whole process of caregiving is so often done in private. That it's things that you kind of do but you don't talk about.
Right.
Because it can make some people uncomfortable. And generally speaking, we really don't like to usually make people uncomfortable. But it's such a part of life that that there's just so much to be gained. Both from the experience and sharing the experience.
Yes, that's true. Did you find a common thread with all the different caregivers that you interviewed, of them having a very deep soul connection to their loved one?
Yes. Yeah, that was probably one of the strongest thread, I guess, that kind of went through. It was that it was kind of like this situation, this caregiving, receiving arrangement was something that was kind of set up in advance in a way, because, it's one of those things that you have such a strong tie to the individual that, when it comes time to being the caregiver, you go ahead and do that. You do what you have to. And that, in turn, strengthens that cord even more by what you're doing.
Yes, that's true. I have often said, and this has been my experience, that as a caregiver, and my son also experienced this, and I read this in the book also, is that unconditional love. You learn unconditional love and a very deep soul connection that really is hard to explain in words. I felt that I had such a deep soul connection to Matt that I never had before, which sounds pretty unusual because, when Matt was before, dementia, we always had a connection, of course, but as he progressed, that deep connection got stronger. And when he couldn't talk, when he was near the end of life and couldn't talk, you just know that they feel your love. And I tell people that, that hearing is the last sense to go. And I believe, in my opinion, God made it that way so that that person could hear us tell them we love them as they are entering their afterlife. And that's why I keep saying, talk to your loved ones. Talk right up till they take their last breath. They hear you.
Yeah. And if you think about it, for the person who is about to transition, what better sense of connection than to have someone be there with you as you're going through that, or just even if you're, the person is laid up and they're not necessarily, right at the brink of death, but someone who is maybe always been independent, self-sufficient, strong in life, and then all of a sudden things change and it's completely reversed. I mean, it's a hard lesson, for that person as well, to be able to receive care unconditionally, like you said.
Yes, and it's also hard, too, for the caregiver to want to receive help in caring for their loved one. And I found that in my own situation. I've heard that with other people. I think people think if they ask for help, then they're not doing their job correctly or they're failing, and they're not. I want to make that very clear to the audience. Please get help. This is something that can't be done by one person. Take my word for it. You need to have a team. And it's not failing your loved one at all. You're getting help is the best thing you can do for yourself and for your loved one, is to get the help so that you're not burnt out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in one of the stories, there was a couple who, alternated between them giving care and having, siblings take care. I mean, and where they actually planned the nights out. They actually made the effort to maintain, some semblance of living outside the caregiving aspect. So, and that's important.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, because that care don't even go for so long. Once the person goes on, you got to go back to your life. So it's good to have it already in motion when you get to that point.
Yes, I feel that the caregiver has to have time for themselves, has to do self-care. It's a matter of survival. It's their survival. And I'm a Jersey girl, Robert, so I get a little harsh. I don't sugarcoat. I tell people that, self-care is a matter of life and death, your life. The statistics among caregivers is getting higher of dying before their loved ones because of all the stress and anxiety. And this is why self-care is so important, because there is going to be life after your loved one's journey. That's a fact. And you want to be able to enjoy that life. You have a right to enjoy that life. And this is what I like to tell people, have your eye, live in the present, but have your eye on the future and start doing some planning for your future after the journey is over.
Yeah.
Were you ever a caregiver, Robert? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. And I was just going to say for that one about, the importance of it, the one story in the book from Orden and Melania Ashley in Costa Rica, Melania was the caregiver for her husband, Orden, who was in a wheelchair. And she was one person who recognized the importance of, her a long time, and she would set up certain rituals of like going to the local market or even planting in the garden, certain things that, kept her in balance. Because she thought, God, what would Orden do if I should be gone before him? So for her, it was, she recognized it was important. Make a long story short, Melania ended up passing on before Orden and before my book was published, after she had written the story. So that was one of those cases where I just thought, I've already got 11 stories in there, but I think they're important enough to get out there. I didn't want any more of that kind of thing to go on before I publish a book where they can, have it to give to friends and family.
Yes, it definitely does. And I want to ask, were you a caregiver, Robert?
Yes, I had an elderly woman who was just, old age, excuse me, but, both knees replaced, hip replaced, so she was kind of bionic. But, toward the end of her life, I did. But one of the things I was lucky enough that she had in place, like an insurance that allowed her to be in a caregiving situation without adding any additional financial stress. So toward the end, she was in a facility, but but that you still caregive even if you're not there 24/7.
Right. And Robert, I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of caregivers, as I'm in a lot of different caregiving support groups, and I have my own, a lot of caregivers think, oh, my loved one's in a facility, so then I'm not a caregiver. You still are a caregiver if your loved one's in a facility. You went from caregiver, you're like their care manager. You're going to the meetings. You're making sure they're getting treated properly. You're making sure they're getting taken care of. You are still a caregiver, just in a different way. And a lot of caregivers don't even know that they are caregivers. They don't realize it. I'm taking care of my husband or my wife.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's just, it's human nature to be caring, I think. So providing care is something that just seems like it should be a natural thing. So when one provides care, it's like, oh, this is just the way that it is. This is the way we've always done it. And but to recognize themselves as a caregiver, then they can maybe frame some of the feelings that they're going through, and because it can be difficult, even with working, with some, facilities, to be able to, provide the care that you need.
Yes, and I like that in the chapter, some of the caregivers also talked about having a do not resuscitate order, about getting power of attorney and living will, and making sure the legal matters are taken care of, which is very, very important, extremely important. I beat that drum all the time. So I'm glad that was also in the book.
Yeah, and I've got a personal story about do not resuscitate. My father, when he was in the hospital in 2000, when he passed, he had given me a DNR because he was very, adamant. That is, when it's done, it's done. I'm going to go on. He had no real fear, of the beyond. But he gave me one. He gave his current wife at the time one, and he gave his doctor one. So when it actually came time to pull out that order, the DNR, not one of us could find it. It was wild. I'm still stunned, that first fact that the doctor didn't have it, but in the next one, in the current one, but it was just wild. And, and then what it did is it put onto me, as the relative, to basically decide, yes or no. And when I tried to talk with him and, just say, this is it, this is, I got the sense of he was reluctant, to have a DNR. So it was horrendous in a weight, to do. So anyway, yes, I, definitely have that DNR, have it handy, have it next to your will, and where people can find it quickly if need be. Because you don't want to, you want, first of all, you want to do what the person wants. You want to honor their wishes. I think that should be the ultimate, right. First of all, honoring their. And then, being able to have the paperwork or have what's needed to make sure that those wishes are carried out. So to me, it's just it's kind of like a human right, to be able to decide our death, or conditions that we want to live under or not.
Right. I always tell people, and I beat this drum too, we plan, where we're going to go to college, when we want to get married, have a baby. We need to plan our end of life, how we want it to look, how we want our service to be, even planning our own funeral. Now, I'm not talking about suicide here, folks. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, what do you want your end of life to look like? Do you want life support? Do you want a DNR? Do you want to be on have a feeding tube? These are all things that need to be thought about. And, Robert, this is how I feel. I feel that every person from 18, which is legal in the United States, I don't know about other countries, but to have a living will, your sole power of attorney, could always be changed, but at least you have something to begin with. I took my son he'll be 38, so it was 2 years ago. At 36, I took him to get power of attorney of him and living will. He's not married and he has special needs, because God forbid something happens to him. I don't want the state of New Jersey involved. I want to make the decisions and carry out what he wants. Very important.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And even sometimes when you plan, you can't always plan for everything. Like the one I was passed on during the pandemic, at the beginning of it. And she had everything planned. She had the slideshow to be played at the memorial. Pictures had to be approved ahead of time. but that couldn't happen. It just couldn't happen during that time. So, but you do your best, and that's what's important.
Yes. The pandemic really threw, for lack of a better word, a wrench in people's grieving and people being able to do their rituals and what they had planned on and what they wanted, because they couldn't have a funeral. They couldn't have, a funeral or a service until months later, sometimes even a year later. And that was really, I felt really bad for those people. My brother died last year, and it was graveside services. He didn't have COVID, but we weren't allowed to, I couldn't see him. My other brother went to see my brother literally when he was dying, and he would have had a packed out service, but people didn't come because of the pandemic. I felt bad for my mom. I really did. Not being able to have it. Yeah.
But, if you believe in the continuation of spirit, it's that kind of honor or support or just that connection can be accessed anytime through the heart. And so that's what's important.
Absolutely. Too. Yes, absolutely. I do believe that, and I believe that I get signs from Matt, and I still feel that he is still here with me. So I don't say, you might think I'm a little wacky, that's okay. I don't say my late husband. I can't say that. I don't like saying my late husband, because to me, he's very much alive in spirit.
Yeah.
And, that's just how I feel. But I also tell people, Robert, that you may not agree with your loved one's wishes, and that's okay. You don't have to agree, but you should honor them. And, that's what should be done. I was going to donate Matt's body to science, but they would have cremated him, and I know he didn't want to be cremated, so I decided against that. And I did, he had what he wanted, a burial. So I felt like if I do something he didn't want, then he would want me. So I felt I couldn't do something that he didn't want to do, that he didn't agree with. So it's very important to carry out the wishes because, that's how people feel guilty. Oh, they didn't want that. I should have done this instead. So, that's just my personal opinion. I'd like to know, Robert, people can purchase your book on Amazon?
Yes, yep. It's there in ebook as well as in paperback.
And I remember correctly, 5-star reviews, folks. Definitely get the book. If I haven't written, I got to go back because I want to write a review if Amazon lets me, because I thought the book was really wonderful, and I really want to encourage my audience not just to buy that book, but to listen to your show. And how can people listen to your show, Robert?
Yeah, my website is biteradio.me, and BITE is an acronym for Bringing Inspiration to Earth. So it's biteradio.me, and on there I have a list of to my calendar, my ongoing podcast. There's and products, there's books and photography. There's just a lot to explore, and I've got over 1,500 podcasts people can choose from. So if they go to the archives page, and at the bottom of the page, I have all of the previous guests, alphabetical order, and you can just check out, scroll through, and find someone you like there or a topic you want, and just listen to any of those.
That's great. I have listened to some of your shows, and I think they're wonderful. So I want to encourage the audience to listen to Robert Sharpe's shows. Now, you're also on the different podcast outlets also, right?
Yeah. The show, what I do is I tape it on a Blog Talk Radio platform, and then once the show concludes, then it gets distributed to Amazon Music Podcast, Audible Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes. So anyway, there's multiple places that people can find.
Okay, I have to ask you this, Robert. How did you what inspired you to become a radio host and have your show? Well,
back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was in Las Vegas, and a friend of mine went on a local news show that moved over to the radio to take some questions and that kind of thing, and he was a hit, and did that multiple times. And then one marketing manager in a casino asked him if he wanted his own show, and he said yeah. So anyway, I ended up being the producer in the background, getting the guests, scheduling the guests, and doing all that kind of stuff, and did that for some years. And then with the advent of internet, radio and blog talk, it was one of those things I had always wanted to try. Cause in the other example, I wasn't in control of the guests and the discussion. I thought I wanted to do it, with the bringing inspiration to earth kind of aspect, and have different people. So anyway, in 2010, I decided I was going to do it, then not, then going to do it, and then finally a voice in my head said, just get out of your own way and do it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, And I did, and have been doing that for 12 years plus.
Wow. That's very impressive. Was just curious. I always ask questions to the guests that I want answers to.
Well, and it's one of those things, it's just like life. You just never know where you're going to be. When people ask you that, what are you doing? What's your hope for 5 years or 10 years? I just think that, it's nice to have a good idea, but there were so many opportunities I had along the way that were zigzag, wasn't a straight line kind of thing. And each one built upon the other, to be able for me to be doing what I'm doing, but it was just one of those things where you just never know where life is going to take you.
Very true, Robert. So very true. I mean, I never thought that I would ever be a talk show host or have a podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was 3 years ago. So yeah, you you don't know what life is going to throw at you, and I always say, your experiences in life. If you were a caregiver, it's a mindset. You could either be a better person for it, or you could be bitter. It's up to the individual. I chose to be a better person. And I had the mindset, and I encourage caregivers, don't let your loved one's journey or disease, whatever it is, destroy you. Don't give it the power. You have the power. You have the strength to get through this. We don't think so at the time, but you get it. You just have to know how to harness it. And I want to, that's my soapbox. But I want to thank you, Robert Sharpe.
You're very welcome. I was just going to say that, being better, choosing to be a caregiver really, I think, sets the stage for receiving care later on. You're going to end up having more people care for you when you need it, if you live a life of caring for others. Yes,
that's true. I believe in karma. You put good things out there, they'll come back to you. And that's what I believe. Robert, can you give your website address again? And it will be in the blog also.
Great. Yes, it's Bite Radio, BITERadio.me. That's the website, biteradio.me. And
awesome.
Yep, and that has everything there. And people can there are ways to contact me through there and through social media as well.
Oh, okay. I want to encourage the audience to do that. Thank you so much, Robert, for coming on, for writing your book, for helping others, inspiring others with your show. You provide resources for people on your show to help others, just like I do, and I appreciate that. I appreciate people like you who have a passion to help others. I just would hug you if I could, if you were in front of me. So thank you so much. And I don't want to forget, I want to thank Sarah Scarlett of Scarlett Publicity for arranging this interview and connecting me with Robert Sharpe. And I appreciate that. And I want to thank Jeannie White, your station manager, Passionate World Talk Radio, for writing the blog, producing the show. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO, Passionate World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible and believes in giving people a chance to be heard and an opportunity and a platform to be heard. Thank you so much, Lillian. I really appreciate Lillian and Jeannie, two wonderful mentors, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank everyone for listening. Please share this podcast to help other people. That's what Chatting with Betsy is about, is helping other people. And I want to thank you all for listening. And a world where you can be anything, folks, please be kind. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.